Closed guard, before we go through how to pass the closed guard, we've got to keep ourselves safe here. When I mean safe from his attacks, his sweeps and his submissions. Things to make it easier for you to survive in this area. So one of the hardest things in Jiu Jitsu is trying to pass or break his legs. Rule number one is posture. So posture is, I don't want to be halfway, never halfway. I either want to be all the way down or I want to be all the way up. Now, if I'm all the way up, this is where I really want to be, because now I can break his legs, okay? But this position's really safe and I can survive here, but it's very hard for me. It's very hard for me to break his legs from here or like start getting offensive in any way. So if we can get to here, this is where we want, but never halfway. Rule number two is don't put your hands on the mat. If you put your hands, it's okay to put your hands on the mat if you're actively posting. Like if he goes to sweep me and I'm like, and then I've got to bring my hands back. But there's so many attacks here. So Kimura, right, from closed guard, boom. Okay, you're giving them that, you're giving them sweeps, you're giving them omoplata. Rule number three is never one in, one out. So what I mean one in, one out, I've got one hand in, one hand out. So this is where he's going to start setting up his triangle, okay? So we want two in or we want two out. What's that? That's three rules. Rule number four is don't put your hand across his body. What you want to do is you want to keep them like railway tracks here. So they're always in line, okay? So if I'm moving my hands, you've got to be very aware where they are. We don't want them too far apart either. So we want them here, but we don't want one here, because then it breaks the rule. So we need them always here, but we definitely don't want to be doing this sort of stuff or like moving our hand across here. We want to keep them centered. And the last rule is I want to keep him directly in front of me. So if I'm in this position, or even in this position, it doesn't matter. If he turns this way, I want to follow him and make sure he's directly in front of me all the time. Most of his attacks are all from angles. He's got to create the angle. So if I'm down here and then he moves to the side, so if he goes this side, boom, I'm going to turn and I'm going to make sure I do that before I start trying to get out of there. So, a little revision. Rule number one is never halfway, okay? So you want to be all the way down or all the way up. Rule number two is don't put your hands on the mat. Rule number three is never one in, one out. He's going to triangle you every time. Rule number four is making sure your arms are nice and straight in line here, okay? So we want them like railway tracks. Even when I'm doing this, don't separate them too much either. So we don't want this, and we don't want to be going forward, putting our elbow across his center line. They must stay like this. And rule number five is make sure he's always directly in front. So if I'm here, if he turns, I follow him, make sure he's directly in front of me. Now I can start looking at passing the guard. So there's 5 rules. Try to remember those rules. You're not going to remember them all when you start rolling or start drilling. But when you make mistakes, that's how you're going to learn, and you'll realise your mistakes because you know why. So practice those 5 rules.